The news and talk of San Antonio 550 KTSA. Glenn Addison rejoining us on the 550 KTSA newsmaker line. He's running his Republican Senate campaign against the mighty, the mighty in terms of funding, the mighty in terms of name recognition. But he is still in there and still slugging away right up till May 29th. And he joins us on the 550 KTSA newsmaker line. Glenn Addison, good morning to you.
Good morning to you, Jack. Thanks for letting me on, sir.
Since you and I last talked, they had that WFAA candidates forum that you were not invited to. Some other polls have come out. We've seen a barrage of negative advertising on behalf of Dewhurst against Cruz, on behalf of Cruz against Dewhurst.
Right.
Where are you in all of this? Do you have any sense of whether any of this has benefited you? Do you know of any poll numbers?
Well, I'll tell you this, Jack. I feel some momentum, and let me tell you why. We're getting calls from all over Texas from people that say, hey, we just were contacted by a pollster, and we were only given 4 names to list. And we said, none of those people am I voting for. I'm voting for Glenn Addison. And the pollsters would say, okay, we'll make a note. But they're not tabulating my numbers. And I'll tell you this, it's encouraging, Jack. If you look at all the U.S. Senate candidates that are running, in recent days and weeks, my Twitter followers have increased over 19,000. Now, that compares to Mayor Leppert at less than 9,000, Craig James at less than 15,000. Cruz has maybe a couple of thousand more than me. But the fact that I'm at over 19,000 Twitter followers just in the last 2 weeks, that tells me that there's some action going on behind the scenes. We see it in the communications that we're receiving. There's chatter all over this state about Glenn Addison, the common man, that the media, elitist media, doesn't want you to hear about. And so, obviously, I don't have the money to do internal polling, but pardon the expression, my gut polling is feeling pretty good about where we are and the momentum that we're building as we talk about liberty, as we talk about restoring the Constitution, and we get specific and say audit and end the Fed, get back to sound monetary policy, as we get specific about restoring our national sovereignty by getting out of the UN, that vehemently anti-American entity, that beast that's been controlling and taking our sovereignty from us. We get specific about abolishing these unconstitutional agencies and federal departments. We're holding up the Constitution everywhere we are, Jack. And I will tell you this, the message resonates, and we convert people everywhere we go. You talked about, I heard right before I came on, you were talking about Ron and his religion. Well, the good Lord knows that song Amazing Grace was written for me, but I do try to serve him every day. And I'll tell you this, Jack, Almighty God is in control. Things are happening out there. If he wants me to be your next U.S. Senator, I will be.
Let me ask you, Glenn Addison, as we talk about this, this came up in our conversation before. Republican candidates in 2012 have learned how to lip sync a lot of these themes that you're hitting on. In other words, They know they've got to sprinkle in phrases like free markets and the Constitution and so forth. But when you listen to them talk, to take just one issue, healthcare. When I listen to Tom Leppert or David Dewhurst talk about healthcare and Obamacare, they say they want to repeal Obamacare, but then they all have some sort of program of government impositions into the marketplace to achieve the objectives they would like to see, that they think we all would like to see in terms of extending insurance policies. In other words, it's really just we're going to move some different levers, but we're still going to use government and therefore mandate to get what we want.
Well, and that's why I tell people all the time, I'll hold up the Constitution, and I kind of teased Mayor Leppert back on January the 12th at that particular debate, that his 33-page plan was longer than the U.S. Constitution. And so when you've got candidates for U.S. Senate that are proposing one federal solution after another, contrast that with my solution, which is get back to the Constitution, because Article 1, Section 8 is less than 2 small pages, as you know. It does not give the federal government the authority to be doing these things in the first place. These powers belong at the state level. And then if we, the people, don't like the way our state reps and state senators are handling the issue, whatever the issue might be, then we can fire them, put them out to pasture, however you want to put it, on Election Day. That's the way it should be. That's the way the Founding Fathers wrote the Constitution. And that's why I keep saying we've got to get back to the book, the Constitution.
But when you run that way, you essentially have to speak a different language, right? Because you can't promise people that government intervention will achieve the desired outcome in every case. You can't promise to make everything okay and make everything turn out right in the end if you are promising to stay within the very narrow constraints of the Constitution.
Oh, absolutely. In fact, last night at a forum in Tyler, Texas, Jack, one of the moderators who had become familiar with my position said, Glenn, you talk about, cutting out these agencies and departments, and you mentioned the phrase bitter medicine. Can you explain yourself? And I said, absolutely. So I'm not pandering to anybody. I'm looking every American in the eye and saying we've got to take our medicine because we as a nation are addicted to debt. It's going to not be pleasant. I'll just tell you straight up, because any addict, when they kick their addiction, will tell you it's the worst thing they've ever been through. And I will tell you this, we better take our medicine soon or it's going to be catastrophic. And as you know, I'm in the funeral home business, Jack, and I've got a number of people in my cemeteries that are there because of addictions. And we've got to kick this addiction to death. It's not going to be pleasant. I was in Amarillo a few weeks back and trying to get a certain Republican to back me because he's pretty prominent out there. And when I told him that all subsidies must be ended, cut, eliminated, he decided he wasn't going to support me because he gets a pretty nice subsidy from the Agriculture Department. And I'm like, that's got to stop. We can't just pick on one program and say, oh, well, don't cut mine. Mine's a good one. No. All subsidies need to be ended. They're not authorized by the Constitution, and we've got to get away from that business.
We're talking with Republican Senate candidate Glenn Addison on 550 KTSA. Doesn't the war on drugs and everything that falls under that umbrella both fail the constitutional test and the we can't afford it anymore test?
Well, the main thing is it fails the constitutional test. Those should be state issues without a doubt. And certainly we can see that the war on drugs has been a miserable failure, and it has been a very, very costly failure. I keep hearing various dollar figures thrown around, Jack, hundreds and hundreds of billions to over $1 trillion, and it obviously is not working. And so it's got to be returned to the states. And I don't have it all figured out, but I'll tell you this: I think that people. That the penalties should be just like if somebody drives drunk, there are severe penalties, and I support those penalties. But if somebody gets just wiped out, messed up, drunk in their own house, that's their business. And that's their right to hurt themselves, if you will, in that way. We all know that it can ruin your health. I can testify to that as a funeral director. But what a person does in the privacy of their own home, from what I can tell, is their business, okay? But if you come out and you do things that might hurt my family or Jack Riccardi's family, I have a problem with that. And I think that's where the penalties should lie.
If you make it to the Senate, you will either be serving in a Senate under a re-elected President Obama or a newly elected President Mitt Romney, most likely. So do you feel like your agenda, the things that you would be fighting for, and let's face it, you might be at times be a very lonely voice on some of these things, yes. Would you have any easier time advocating for these things under President Mitt Romney from what you have seen of him, or is it going to be a battle no matter which one of them is elected?
I think it'll be a smaller battle with Mitt Romney. You mentioned he's a very moral man. I agree with that. I believe that the man loves the United States, and I believe that I can convert him to wanting to restore the U.S. Constitution. I believe that President Obama, well, I won't go into what I believe because this is a family show, but
you don't think you can convert him?
I don't think I can convert Barack Obama. I do not. And so that's where the real battle lies, and that's where I will launch a twofold assault, if you will. One is on the floor of the Senate with regard to what can be done at the federal level against a re-elected President Obama. But secondly, I will do everything I can to promote the concept of nullification in the various 50 states. Certainly in my home state, I, as a citizen, as a U.S. Senator, I can only talk to my state reps and state senators. But I would hope that our governor would call the legislature into special session, pass strong nullification laws, so that when and if the federal government continues to pass dictates that are not constitutional, that the legislature in the state of Texas will say, we will not allow that unconstitutional law to be enforced. And if you come to our state, our county sheriffs, the highest law of the land, will arrest you and put you in jail, federal officials, if you attempt to enforce an unconstitutional law. So if Barack Obama is reelected, it's going to have to be a twofold fight. One at the state level by strong Texas leaders, and one in the U.S. Senate by somebody like myself that has the backbone to stand up and fight on behalf of the U.S. Constitution.
All right, Republican candidate Glenn Addison. The website's GlennAddison.com. Appreciate the time, sir. We'll talk to you again.
Sounds great, Jack. Thank you, sir.